Good morning, everybody. My name is Susan Jennings. I'm the author of The Blue Pendant, the first book in the Sackville Hotel trilogy. And this is part of the serialization. And today we're going to read from chapter 7. And the chapter title is Nothing is Fair in Love and War. Still awake at midnight, Anna stared at the ceiling. Mr. Lytton's words repeating in her head. Britain is safe. She wanted to believe him, but her intuition told her otherwise. Sophie opened the door, sniggering. I almost beat Bill at chess tonight. I don't know what you see in that game. Or is it Bill, and not the game? Anna replied, teasing Sophie to cover up the pain of her jealousy. Maybe some of both. Sophie yawned. I'm tired. Good night, Anna. Sleep evaded Anna most of the night. She thought about how she had welcomed Sophie's friendship and even accepted, perhaps reluctantly, the foursome. She couldn't deny that her rejection of Bill had allowed their friendship to grow. She hadn't expected Bill to let her go so easily. Pouting, she pulled the covers over her head and muttered, See if I care. Alex is far more fun. The four had planned to enjoy their last free Saturday afternoon before the summer rush, but Bill and Sophie were engrossed in another chess game. You two go ahead, we'll catch up when our game is finished, Bill said, staring at the chessboard. Alex ushered Anna outside, having no qualms about taking advantage of Anna's rejection of Bill. She had made it blatantly clear to everyone that Bill was a friend. Whether he believed her or not was immaterial. Alex was preparing to win Anna's affections. Alex borrowed 2 bicycles and took Anna along the coastal trail of the Bexhill smugglers. They rode to Galley Hill, where the Mortello Towers once stood, the lookout tower for coastguards waiting to spot smugglers. A gentle sea breeze pushed puffy white clouds across a blue sky and rustled from the sandy cliff. They sat on the top of the cliff holding hands, gazing across the English Channel. Alex's talent for drama, coupled with his interest in local history, made him a great storyteller. His deep, hypnotic voice and animated expressions implied mystery and suspense, even before the story began. Anna listened, staring into his eyes, mesmerized. Anna, imagine the coastguards huddled in the Mortello Tower over on the cliff. He pointed to where the tower once stood, waiting under cover of darkness for the first splash of the smuggler's dory landing on the beach, bidding their time to pounce on the unsuspecting smugglers and confiscate the illicit cargo. Alec took a breath, building the suspense. Years of smuggling had taught them to see in the blackest of the moonless nights, and to be stealthy, nimble, and silent. They beached the dory and unloaded the contraband, passing it along the trail from man to man to man to waiting carts. By the time the smugglers' movements alerted the coastguards, the smugglers had an army of men lining the trail. Batsmen, armed with heavy wooden bats to be used as weapons for the sole purpose of injuring or even killing anyone who got in the way, including the coastguards. Anna and Alex laughed, envisioning the poor coastguard with the impossible task of outmaneuvering the smugglers. Alex's eyes riveted to Anna's. He stopped talking and gently pulled her close and kissed her tenderly on the lips. Anna, incapable of resisting, drifted into his arms, allowing herself to return the kiss. Neither said a word. Suspended in time, they stared at the horizon, listening to the breeze. Alex spoke first. The channel is full of ships today, but those are not smugglers' dories. They look like battleships. Those grey ones with the turrets are battleships? Anna replied, anxious for normal conversation to counteract the warm sensuality that Alex had triggered and was now rippling through her body. "Do you think there'll be war?" She hesitated. "Mr. Lytton says Britain is safe, but I'm not sure that's true." "No," Alex touched her hair. "Don't fill your pretty head with such thoughts." She smiled as his touch sent a pleasant tingle down her spine, not in the least prepared for what he said next. "I love you, Anna. Will you marry me?" "Alex, are you teasing me? If you are, it's not funny." As the words came out of her mouth, she saw the love in his expression. He was serious, more serious than she had ever heard him before. Startled by his question and by her immediate reaction to say yes, she began twisting long blades of grass in her fingers. "Alex, I've told you before, I don't want to get married. Yet." Anna jumped up and ran towards the bicycles. "I'll race you back to the hotel." Completely out of breath, Anna and Alex opened the back door. After tidying her hair, but still flushed from pedaling, Anna joined Mr. Lytton at the front desk. "The fresh sea air suits you, Miss Neale. You are glowing," Mr. Lytton said with a smile. "Lady Thornton has requested that you resume your duties with her correspondence on Tuesday." "Oh, that is good news. Mrs. Banks said she had some kind of fever. She must be feeling better." Tuesday at noon, Anna knocked at the door of Suite 305. Berkeley greeted her with a warm smile and showed her into the dining room, where she joined Lady Thornton for luncheon. "Lady Thornton, it is good to see you again. Are you feeling better?" Anna didn't think she looked well at all. "Yes, thank you. Dr. Gregory thinks I caught a chill on the journey. Travelling becomes more difficult as one gets older. But you are young and wouldn't understand. How was Bexhill this winter?" Lady Thornton asked, briskly changing the subject. "Bleak and stormy most of the time. I have never experienced such violent storms, and I found them quite invigorating. But Alex seemed strangely upset." Lady Thornton raised a questioning eyebrow. "Alex? What happened to Bill?" Anna blushed. How did she know about Bill? "We're all friends. Alex, Bill, and Sophie, my roommate. We spend time together during the winter." Anna did not want to talk about her thoughts and feelings. She moved quickly to the typewriter. "I'd better start your correspondence. How was London?" "Thwarted by a different kind of storm. I don't know what the world is coming to. It is changing, and I don't like change." There was a petulant edge to her voice. She frowned, her nose wrinkled, recalling unpleasantness. Anna looked up. "Is something wrong, milady?" "London is terrible. I don't feel safe anymore. The factory workers are militant, violent, and talking about strikes. The suffragettes are marching for votes for women, getting arrested and imprisoned. Why women want to vote is beyond me. Sylvia Pankhurst has been on another hunger strike, and my own son has become involved with one of her acquaintances." Her voice quivered. She dabbed a white lace handkerchief against the corner of her eye. "It is unbecoming for women to behave in such a way. The country is out of control, and so is my son." Surprised by her candid words and obvious hurt and anger towards her son Darcy, Anna remained silent. Dramatically raising her hand to her forehead, she sighed. "Lord Thornton would know what to do, but his bones are at the bottom of the cold Atlantic Ocean." She paused for effect. "But Darcy would not take heed of his father's words. No matter how hard I tried, Lord Thornton always found his sons lacking." Anna smiled at the drama. However, drama aside, Lady Thornton did not look well. She lay prostrate on the chaise longue. Princess curled on her lap, both dozing fitfully, paying little attention to Anna punching the typewriter keys. The reference to sons, plural, had not escaped Anna. Lady Thornton only ever spoke of Darcy. What was the story, and how many sons did she have? Anna instinctively disliked Darcy, a spoilt brat who showed no respect for his mother. However, his romantic involvement with the suffragette redeemed him somewhat. A keen follower of the Pankhurst family, Anna admired their fight for women. Her personal ambition for independence prompted her to read what she could in the newspapers. Anna had assumed Lady Thornton to be an advocate for women's independence. To hear her disagree with women having the vote was disappointing. And yet she had encouraged Anna to follow her dreams of travelling. Or had she? Anna remembered the day she had asked how she was going to travel, and the implications that she needed money or a husband, and preferably both. She wondered, was marriage really such a bad thing? Alex's proposal jumped into her mind. Some women married quite successfully. Perhaps Lady Thornton's referral to Darcy's acquaintance with a suffragette had more to do with a mother's concern for her son and the likelihood of a bad marriage. Engrossed in her imagination, Anna unwittingly stopped typing. "Miss Neale, if you have finished, that will be all for today. Please ask Barclay to help me to my bed." Alarmed, Anna asked, "Should I ask Mr. Pickles to call the doctor?" "No, Barclay will take care of me. I just need rest." Anna left Suite 305, giving Barclay instructions to call her if she needed the doctor. As the summer progressed, there was a heightened sense of gaiety among the guests. They were loud, boisterous, and demanding. Anna detected an undercurrent of tension, and it frightened her a little. She mentioned her fears to Mr. Lytton. He agreed the atmosphere was different, but considered the blame to have more to do with the heat. July was hotter than usual. Exhausted after a chaotic day, Anna didn't feel like being convivial in the staff dining hall tonight, so she climbed the stairs to be alone in her room. The open windows on the landing gave a nice cross breeze, but a wall of heat hit her as she opened the door to her attic bedroom. She immediately flung the window wide open and changed into a light cotton nightdress. The cool cotton and gentle sea breeze felt refreshing on her skin. She lay on top of her bed, falling asleep immediately. A woman cried out and woke Anna. She looked across to Sophie, who was in a deep sleep. Anna sat up, her pulse beating faster and faster. The cry was her own, the nightmare frightening, as arms had pulled her in different directions. She'd cried out, telling them to stop and leave her alone. She was dripping with perspiration. The attic bedroom was stifling, and the breeze that had lulled her to sleep had disappeared, leaving the air heavy. Wide awake, she squinted at the bedside clock. 2 a.m. Her legs felt like lead as she walked through the thick air, hoping to get a breeze from the open window. Sitting at the desk, staring into the blackness of night, she wrestled with her own conflicts. Alex was getting too close, and Bill was moving further away. Am I pushing Bill away? She wondered. Sophie had confided in Anna about how much she loved Bill. She had even asked Anna if she thought Bill loved her. Anna was in turmoil, telling the world that Bill was a good friend, but deep inside she was jealous of Sophie's affections for him. How could she feel this way towards her friend? Was she in love with Bill and Alex at the same time? She loved them all, and she wanted things to stay the same, but that wasn't possible. She knew someone was going to get hurt. A big flash of light changed her focus. She stared intently, and a silver slither of light escaped from behind a black cloud, breaking the darkness, and a beam of shivering silver settled like a beacon on the dark water as a full moon appeared. She held her breath at what the light revealed. A fleet of battleships sailing silently northward in the English Channel. Ghost ships, moving fast and with purpose, the only light coming from the white iridescent wake caught in the moonlight. A rush of wind forced its way into the attic bedroom and blew the clouds back over the moon, plunging the channel back into blackness. Sophie was now standing silently next to Anna. Anna looked at her and said, "Did you see what I see?" Speechless, Sophie nodded. The wind howled and the rain splattered in through the open window, but they left it open to feel the fresh coolness. The short storm cleared the humid air. Anna and Sophie, both stunned at what they had witnessed, sat on their beds. "Do you think this means war?" Anna asked. "No, I think it was those battleships that steamed past the royal yacht saluting the king last week. Admiral Rothman on the 3rd floor, he's retired, but he was also excited about the Royal Navy exercise at Spithead, the king being there and all." Sophie paused. "Maybe they're going back to where they came from." "Yes, you could be right, but it seems strange that they would sail at night like that." Anna yawned. "It's 3 o'clock, only 2 hours before Amy wakes us up." Nobody else had witnessed the fleet of battleships, and nothing was mentioned in the newspapers. Sophie and Anna were beginning to think they had witnessed ghost ships after all. Anna suggested Sophie asked Admiral Rothman. At tea time, Sophie rushed into the staff dining room, beckoning to Sophie to follow her outside. They sat on the bench by the back door. Sophie could hardly contain herself. "Anna, this is exciting. Admiral Rothman was shocked when I told him about the battleships. You should have seen his face. Apparently nobody was supposed to see those ships. I was right. They were the ships that sailed before the royal yacht. And you were right too, as they were sailing under cover of night with no light so as not to alert anyone that they were being moved to a secret place. He wouldn't tell me where." "Sophie, this means trouble." "It may mean war." "I had such a bad feeling about it." "It's all right. Admiral Rothman said the Royal Navy was conducting a training exercise and there's nothing to worry about. But he did say that we were not to tell anyone what we had seen." "If there's nothing to worry about, why is it secret?" "Anna, stop worrying. Come, let's have some tea. I think Bill has made a Victoria sponge today." Anna did worry, and for good reason, as was proved only a week later. Early, before 6 on the morning of August the 5th, 1914, Anna was surprised to find a grave-looking Mr. Pickles and Mrs. Banks in the staff dining hall, instructing Amy to tell all the staff to stop what they were doing and assemble immediately. Something of the utmost importance was to be announced. A tearful Mrs. Banks herded the hushed, anxious staff through the door. People were pushing and complaining as the room filled to capacity, the hush now a low, nervous chatter. Mr. Pickles stood at the head of the table, looking pale and extremely grim. Whatever he was about to say was so momentous it took him several minutes to compose himself sufficiently to speak. Taking a deep breath, he paused and looked over to Mrs. Banks, who brushed tears from her cheeks, and in a rare gesture of support, she moved to his side. Both stood tall and with an air of solidarity. "It is with great sadness that I have to announce that Britain is at war with Germany. Prime Minister Asquith made the declaration near midnight last night, August 5th. There was a collective intake of breath, a low, almost inaudible murmur, and the shushing of shuffling nervous feet, followed by complete silence as the gravity of Mr. Pickles' words was processed. Shocked, but not surprised, Anna's intuition sensed an impending darkness. Not just the war, which was terrifying in itself, but the transformation it would bring. Over the next several weeks, the hotel began to resume a normal routine. The guests continued their holidays. The gaiety had become even more exaggerated, as though laughing and playing would make the war go away. Other than an increased presence of military uniforms, as black tails were exchanged for officers' uniforms in the dining room, it was hard to imagine that there was in fact a war going on. For the most part, hotel life went on as usual. The young maids reeled in giggles at the handsome Uniformed young men of all classes talked excitedly about signing up to serve their country. Patriotism was high. Parliament pushed Irish Home Rule to the side to deal with the war. Labour unrest died down as strikers found war more appealing, and even the suffragettes temporarily dropped their cause. Most of the population united to fight for Britain. The recruiting officers were overwhelmed with eager volunteers, which included many of the hotel's male staff members. The season at its height, with several more weeks of bookings, Mr. Pickles' mood had darkened with frustration. He was faced with managing a hotel with mostly female staff. Having neither respect nor confidence in women, he relied heavily on Mr. Lytton. But James Lytton's loyalties were for his country, not Mr. Pickles or the Sackville Hotel. The air was thick and heavy the day he marched into Mr. Pickles' office. Anna was engulfed in the leather chair taking shorthand. "My notice, Mr. Pickles," he said, placing an envelope on the mahogany desk, standing to attention, his chest puffed out with pride and a slight smile. He's enjoying this, Anna thought. Realizing he had not seen her in the chair, Anna stood up. "I'll come back later, Mr. Pickles." "Oh, my apologies, Mr. Pickles. I did not realize Miss Neal was here." Mr. Pickles grunted and opened the envelope. "I have been offered a commission in the 9th Sussex Battalion and will be leaving at the end of the week." Scarlet as a tomato, Mr. Pickles finally found his voice and bellowed, "How could you leave now? I need you here, Mr. Lytton. I will not allow this." "Mr. Pickles, my country needs me a great deal more. In case you haven't noticed, we are at war. Saturday will be my last day." Mr. Lytton's face was purple with rage. He turned and marched out of the office, past Anna's desk to the reception counter. Anna feared he would lose his temper and say something he might regret. She walked over and placed her hand on his sleeve. "Congratulations on your commission, Mr. Lytton." Facing Anna, he said, "I probably should have expected that reaction. Miss Neal, you will have to take over my duties." "Oh, I don't know if I can do that." "Take over all the front desk duties?" Anna's thoughts were racing. This was a dream come true, but in the face of reality she questioned if she could handle the responsibility. "Miss Neal, you are as good at this position as I am. You have been a good apprentice and learned well. It is time for you to take over. Mr. Pickles may be difficult, but he needs you, and don't forget that." Anna beamed with pride. The compliment from Mr. Lytton touched her deeply. "I'm going to miss you very much." And she thought, his watchfulness, knowing he was only a few feet away when she took dictation, was a comfort. "Anna, you are a strong young woman. Don't be afraid and never let him see your fear. He learned his lesson, and I doubt he will ever try to touch you again." It was then that she realized Mr. Lytton had known all along what happened in the office that day. Euphoria permeated everything and everyone as the young men enlisted and started military training. Both Alex and Bill were caught up in the frenzy and talked of enlisting, but Mr. Pickles, terrified of losing more staff, persuaded them to wait. A carnival atmosphere fueled by patriotism and a desire to protect filled the air. Marriages increased at an alarming rate. It all seemed for the best as reality set in and the impact of war began to weigh heavily on those left behind. Anna poured a cup of tea and lifted the pot, gesturing towards Sophie. "Tea?" "Yes, thank you." Sophie sat at the table, putting her feet up on a spare chair. "I'm tired. Another maid quit for the munitions factory today. How are things with you since Mr. Lytton left?" "Like you, busy. Old Prickly Pickles is even more demanding, but I love the work. Greeting the guests and organizing everything. Not that Pickles appreciates it. He watches me as I move around the office. He gives me the creeps." "Be careful, Anna. Don't ever be alone with him." I always keep the door open, and now Miss Jenkins is here most days. I only have dictation when she is here. Oh, did you hear that thin little parlour maid is getting married on Saturday? Her fiancé is leaving for France next week. I expect she thinks it's the only way she can support him while he's at war. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I never want to get married. The drudgery of all the domestic stuff scares me, but I admit the war has changed things. Sophie closed her eyes and sighed. Oh, I think it's romantic. Soldiers should have someone to come home to. It's patriotic. With a hint of glamour, Anna added, amused at Sophie's explanation, but I do agree that in the face of war, marriage takes on a different meaning. Bill walked in, uncharacteristically agitated, and slammed a copy of the Times on the table. The casualties are staggering, according to this report. The politicians say the war will be won by Christmas. Quite different from this report. I'm not sure what to believe. They all bent over the Times newspaper. Shock was apparent from the short, breathless comments. The euphoria of early August had plunged into an abyss as they all thought about the implications of war. By October, the empty hotel felt eerie, even ghostly. Bexhill was changing as the Cooden camp, only a mile or so up the road, filled with young men training for war. The public houses and streets filled with soldiers making merry before being deployed to the continent. But on this particular Saturday the streets were deserted. A storm was brewing from the north. Anna and Alex walked along the empty beach, watching the wind whip the waves into thick white caps. Anna tied her hat under her chin, but it still blew into the nape of her neck, secured by the bow. Holding hands, they laughed as they jumped the waves, breaking on the breakwater. Alex was getting wet, and Anna's skirt was soaked. Alex pulled Anna to him, and they kissed, a long kiss, oblivious to the rising tide until Anna felt cold water wash over her feet up to her ankles. She screamed in delight. Alex kissed her again, whispering in her ear, "I love you, marry me." Alex's arms intertwined around her, making them as one. The calm in the centre of the storm as the wind howled and swirled around them. Wanting this moment to go on forever, Anna didn't answer. Alex broke the spell. Pushing them apart, he dramatically knelt on one knee and shouted, "Anna, will you marry me? I have decided to enlist in the army. Please marry me." Anna didn't answer. She was not sure she had heard him correctly. Alex stood from his kneeling position, but the drama continued. "I can't go to war unless I know you will marry me. I'm going to walk into the sea, and will keep walking until you say yes." Anna watched in disbelief as Alex slowly waded into the sea, the stormy waves knocking him off balance. "Alex, don't be a fool, you will get soaked," Anna called after him, laughing. She was used to his teasing and pranks, but this was making her afraid. He was going too far. He kept walking. The water was now up to his thighs. Whitecaps curled on top of a wall of water. The waves expanded. Horrified to see two big waves taller than Alex's 6'3" rolling towards her, she screamed as first one, then the other smashed into him, sucking him under the water. "Yes, I'll marry you. Please come back." Minutes passed. No sign of Alex. Another wave came rolling in and smashed on the breakwater. As it receded, Alex's head popped up. Anna began running towards the water, yelling, "I will marry you. You fool, Alex." He managed to get his footing and held on to the heavy wooden breakwater and waded towards the shore. The panic was now in Alex's voice as he saw Anna trying to reach him. "Stay there, Anna. You'll get wet." Anna couldn't hear him over the roar of the waves. She yelled again, even louder. "I will marry you, you fool." The words carried off on the wind, but now they were in each other's arms. Dripping wet, they walked towards the promenade, laughing as Alex squelched with each step. He stopped to empty the water from his boots. Anna was shivering, her skirt and coat were soaked. Suddenly Alex wailed, Meg, what have I done? You'll catch your death of cold. The jocular mood instantly switched to horror. Alex, what is wrong? I'm fine, if rather wet. She shivered again as the gale-force wind blew around her skirts. Thunder and lightning filled the air, and the skies unleashed a deluge of rain. Meg, darling, I must take you home and get you warm. He scooped her up in his arms and ran along the beach to the promenade. Alex, what is wrong? Put me down. Anna wrapped her arms around his neck, clinging for dear life. Anna's cries unheard, Alex kept running. He kicked the back door of the hotel open and ran right into Mrs. Banks, who was talking to Bill. What in God's green earth happened to you two? Mrs. Banks, we must get Meg warm quickly, or she will die. Anna's voice had an edge of fear. Alex, put me down now. I'm wet, not an invalid, and who is Meg? Her face flushed with embarrassment as she looked at Mrs. Banks. Only then did she notice Bill standing in the shadows. She looked away, avoiding his stare, but not before she saw something emotional pass from Bill to Alex. Alex's vacant eyes darted from Bill to Mrs. Banks to Anna before staring into space for a brief second. He sucked in a laboured breath, exhaling slowly, allowing his body to relax and quickly find words of explanation. We were walking on the beach, and a rogue wave caught us by surprise, and when the storm broke we were caught in the rain. Mrs. Banks opened her mouth to reply, just as the back door blew open and the rain pounded on everything inside as well as outside, and the gale blew Carter through the door. Carter appeared to be dripping as profusely as Alex. Miss Neal and Mr. Walker, go and change your clothes before you catch your death, and Carter, go and dry off by the fire. That night, Anna swore Sophie to secrecy and confided in her all that had happened on the beach, including Alex's strange reaction. It was as though he was in a complete daze. He stared into another place. He scooped me up as though I was a child and ran. Anna hesitated. He was terrified of something. That is so romantic, Sophie said, practically swooning. Sophie, it wasn't like that. It wasn't me he was carrying. It was someone else. He called me Meg. When we bumped into Mrs. Banks, he said, we must get Meg warm. She's going to die. And then he seemed to realize who I was and where we were. Aware of sounding somewhat strange, Anna told Sophie about the proposal and that she had accepted. They giggled like schoolgirls making wedding plans. Sophie expressed her affection for Bill and hoped that he would propose marriage. The thought of Bill marrying Sophie gave her a jolt of reality as she grasped the magnitude of what she had done. She had made her choice, Alex over Bill. Deep inside she felt a wound. Was it hers or Bill's? She had always known how much her rejection had hurt Bill. She recalled the look that had passed between Bill and Alex and guessed its significance. So thank you for being here. That concludes episode 7. And I will be reading episode 8, probably a couple of weeks. And that is called Bill's Demise. If you would like to read on, all the books are available on the book retailers, mostly online, Amazon of course, but it's also available in some stores, Chapters Indigo in Ottawa, Coles in Ottawa, and in some places, bookstores, if you go in and order it, you can actually get the book. So give it a try, or just wait until we come up with the next episode. So bye for now. Have a wonderful 2 weeks, and we'll see you again soon.